Every winter morning at 4:30 a.m., I cleared our driveway while she slept, until I discovered what she really thought of me. At 42, while clearing snow from our driveway at 4:30 in the morning before my shift, I discovered my wife Sarah had left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. As I stepped inside to escape the brutal cold for just a moment, I glanced at the screen and saw her text exchange. "He's out there like a moron in this storm," she'd written. "With any luck, he'll collapse and save us the hassle of divorce proceedings." Her lover Christopher replied with 3 laughing emojis. I finished clearing every inch of that driveway, drove to work as usual, and began planning her destruction. Yesterday, she begged for forgiveness. You know that moment when everything you believed about your life suddenly crumbles? Not the gentle realization that comes with age and wisdom, but the violent shattering that leaves you gasping for air in your own kitchen? This is that story. February 23rd, 18 degrees below zero with the wind chill, the kind of cold that makes your lungs burn with each breath. Dark as the inside of a coffin at 4:30 in the morning, with another 10 inches of fresh snow blanketing our driveway. I remember checking the weather forecast before bed, a blizzard warning through dawn, but I still set my alarm for 4:15. 12 years working at the distribution center taught me that Mother Nature isn't an excuse for missing your shift. You show up, you do the work, you take care of your responsibilities. Sarah was still buried under our thick comforter when I slipped out of bed. 6 years of marriage, and she'd never once offered to help with snow removal. Never suggested I stay inside during dangerous weather. Just expected that magical pathway to appear by the time she left for her office job at 8:30. That's how our dynamic had always functioned, and honestly, I'd never questioned it. My father taught me that a real man handles the physical demands of maintaining a home and protecting his family. Looking back now, with the clarity that only comes from betrayal, there were warning signs scattered everywhere like breadcrumbs leading to disaster. The late evening phone calls she'd take in the bathroom. New clothes appearing in her closet without explanation. Expensive makeup she claimed was for work confidence. The way she'd laugh at text messages but quickly hide the screen when I entered the room. Classic red flags that my trusting brain kept explaining away. She's networking for career advancement. She deserves to feel beautiful. She's just having good days more frequently. When you love someone completely, your mind becomes an expert at creative justification. So there I stood, bundled in 3 layers, snow reaching my knees, pushing that damn shovel across concrete at 4:30 in the morning. No neighbors visible yet, just me and the rhythmic scraping sound cutting through the winter silence. Steam rose from my face like an old factory smokestack. The security light mounted on our garage cast this pathetic yellow glow across the pristine whiteness. Halfway through the driveway, my fingers went numb despite the insulated gloves. I needed to warm up. I stomped the snow off my boots and entered through our side door into the kitchen. Sarah had apparently come downstairs for water at some point during the night, leaving her phone on the granite countertop. Nothing unusual about that detail. What made me look twice was seeing the screen still illuminated, still unlocked, with a new text notification glowing at the top. I'm not a suspicious person by nature. Never have been. But when your brain registers your own name in a message preview, it's like touching a live wire. You can't not look. The message thread was between Sarah and someone saved in her contacts as Chris W. Her most recent text read, "He's out there like a moron in this storm. With any luck, he'll collapse and save us the hassle of divorce proceedings." Christopher's reply had just arrived. 3 laughing emojis followed by Darwin Award winner right there. My chest didn't seize up immediately. First came this strange detachment, like watching someone else's life through thick glass. Then the cold sweat started, followed by this hollow sensation in my stomach, as if someone had scooped out my insides with a rusty spoon. A buzzing filled my ears, similar to standing too close to heavy machinery. The familiar kitchen suddenly felt foreign, hostile. I must have stood there for 3 full minutes, just staring at those words. Not breathing properly, not thinking coherently, just absorbing the reality that the woman I'd been married to for 6 years was hoping to find me dead in our driveway, frozen solid, so she wouldn't have to deal with the inconvenience of legal proceedings. Finally, I placed her phone back exactly as I'd found it, pulled my gloves back on, walked outside, finished clearing that entire driveway with methodical precision, like a machine programmed for a single task. Each shovelful of snow became evidence that I was very much alive, very much capable of surviving whatever Sarah had planned for me. I drove to the distribution center, clocked in, went through all the motions of a normal shift. But my mind was elsewhere, running calculations and making observations. Who was Christopher? How long had this been happening? What divorce was she referring to? She'd never mentioned wanting a divorce to me. Had they been planning this conversation, hoping nature would solve their problem? When I returned home that evening, Sarah acted completely normal. Asked about my day, made small talk about the weather forecast, mentioned how grateful she was that I'd cleared the driveway so early. I nodded, smiled, played my part perfectly. But inside, I was already 3 steps ahead, planning and strategizing. That night, while Sarah showered, I tried accessing her phone again. Password protected now, of course. She'd learned caution. I lay in bed listening to her breathe beside me, wondering how someone could wish death upon the person sharing their pillow. Our ceiling fan clicked with each rotation, marking time like a countdown timer. The next morning, I woke before my alarm and checked our bank accounts on my phone while still in bed. No unusual withdrawals, but I noticed something interesting. Sarah had stopped depositing her full paycheck into our joint account about 4 months ago. Another warning sign I'd been too trusting to catch. I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. Waited until Sarah left for work, then began searching our house systematically. Found nothing in the obvious places, but when I checked the pocket of her rarely worn winter coat, I discovered a hotel receipt from downtown. 2 weeks ago, when she'd claimed to be at a mandatory work conference. Room service for 2 people. I photographed everything with my phone. Evidence gathering, like those crime shows Sarah always insisted we watch together. The irony wasn't lost on me. I called James, my oldest friend. Known him since we were kids causing trouble in abandoned lots around town. He came over immediately, bringing coffee and donuts from our favorite local bakery. Sat at my kitchen table while I explained everything, showing him the photos, walking through the timeline. You need to get organized before she realizes you know, he said, methodically working through a chocolate-glazed donut. She's planning something. You need to plan better. James survived 2 brutal divorces himself. Says it follows the same playbook every time. Whoever strikes first holds the advantage. He helped me access our cell phone account online. Sarah and someone listed as Christopher had exchanged over 1,500 texts in the past month. Hundreds of phone calls, always during her lunch breaks or while I was at work. The call logs revealed a pattern extending back at least 5 months. Classic affair timeline, James observed, scrolling through the data on my laptop. Starts with occasional contact, escalates to constant communication. She's completely invested now. I felt like operating dangerous machinery without proper training. Everything seemed loud and potentially catastrophic. One wrong move could destroy everything. James helped me establish a separate bank account that afternoon. We transferred half of our savings and money I'd been accumulating for the kitchen renovations Sarah had been requesting. The irony was bitter enough to make me laugh, that hollow sound that echoes in your own skull. That night, I observed Sarah more carefully, how she constantly checked her phone, the way she kept it face down during dinner, how she'd step outside to take certain calls, the slight smile when specific messages arrived. All these behaviors I'd dismissed as normal now looked like glaring alarm bells. We should plan a vacation, I suggested casually over dinner. Maybe in June. Could use some time away together. She didn't even glance up from her phone. June's crazy busy at work. Maybe later in the summer. By summer, she expected to be free of me, either through divorce or through my convenient demise in our driveway. The realization made me grip my fork until my knuckles turned white. I spent the weekend cataloging our assets, the house we'd purchased 4 years ago, both vehicles, all the furniture, our retirement accounts, everything we'd built together while pretending nothing had changed. Watching television together Saturday night, making breakfast Sunday morning, small talk about absolutely nothing. Monday, during lunch break, I called Rebecca, my sister. She's always been the practical one in our family. When our parents died in that car accident, she handled all the arrangements while I was still processing the reality. I needed that organizational energy now. She listened without interrupting as I explained the situation. When I finished, silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "You need an attorney," she finally said. "Today. And you need to discover who Christopher really is." Finding him didn't take long. A quick search of Sarah's work directory on LinkedIn revealed Christopher Martinez, department manager at her company. Married, 2 children, distinguished silver hair, and perfect teeth in his professional profile photo. I nearly threw my phone across the break room. 3 days later, I sat in an attorney's office during what was supposed to be my regular shift. Used more sick time. The lawyer, an experienced woman with reading glasses and a no-nonsense demeanor, examined all the evidence I'd collected and nodded approvingly. "You've done excellent preliminary work," she said. "Most people arrive here emotional and empty-handed. You're ahead of the game." She outlined the legal process, financial implications, and timeline. Everything sounded clinical, like diagnosing equipment failure. Replace Part A with Part B, resume operations. "One more thing," I said as our consultation ended. "I don't just want a divorce. I want her to regret ever thinking my death would be convenient." The attorney removed her glasses and studied me carefully. "Revenge isn't my specialty, but I can ensure you don't get financially destroyed. The rest is your choice." That evening, I looked across our dinner table at Sarah and felt nothing but cold determination. The woman who'd hoped I'd freeze to death was chatting about office politics like nothing was wrong. Smiling, planning her exit strategy, waiting for her opportunity. But I would be the blizzard she never saw coming. I've spent the past week gathering additional evidence, consulting with the attorney, moving money, documenting everything systematically. Sarah hasn't noticed anything different. Too consumed with her affair, her secret plans, her fantasy future with Christopher. Tomorrow, I begin phase 2, the part where I stop being passive. The part where I stop clearing her path through life. First major update, I want to thank everyone who messaged me after my last post. Never expected that kind of response. Reading your stories helped me understand I'm not alone in this nightmare. Some of you have survived much worse situations. Respect to the guy whose ex tried poisoning his protein supplements. Hope you're thriving now. It's been 18 days since I discovered those texts. 18 days of living with someone who wished me dead. 18 days of pretending everything was normal while systematically dismantling the life we'd constructed together. Remember how I mentioned consulting with an attorney? I've had 4 additional meetings since then. Divorce is incredibly complicated, like trying to separate 2 engines that have been running together for years. Cables and wires all intertwined, oil mixed together, shared components everywhere. The attorney suggested documenting everything, so I purchased one of those password-protected journal applications. Been logging every conversation, every suspicious behavior, every time Sarah lies about her whereabouts. James has been invaluable throughout this process. His technical knowledge proved crucial when I needed to recover deleted messages from our cloud backup. We spent an entire Saturday afternoon in his garage, laptops open, energy drinks accumulating, digging through data while his dog kept trying to claim keyboard space. Found 7 months of messages between Sarah and Christopher. 7 months. The texts were worse than I'd imagined. Detailed plans for their future together. Complaints about me. Explicit accounts of hotel meetings during supposed work trips. And yes, more jokes about my potential demise. Apparently, my slightly elevated cholesterol, which Sarah always claimed to worry about, was another source of hope for them. How convenient it would be if I just dropped dead naturally. I printed everything. 3-hole punched it. Put it in a binder. Old school approach, but there's something satisfying about physical evidence you can slam down on a table. Phase 1 was information gathering. Phase 2 involves applying pressure that Sarah won't immediately recognize as pressure. Small behavioral changes, subtle shifts in our routine. The kind of adjustments that make someone feel like they're losing control but can't identify why. Started by changing my work schedule. Told Sarah I'd been assigned different hours due to project requirements. In reality, I've been using that time to meet with the attorney, establish separate accounts, and document our assets. I've begun moving personal items to a storage unit James helped me rent. Family photographs, heirlooms from my parents, important documents. Nothing Sarah would immediately notice missing, but enough that I'll be prepared when everything explodes. The financial preparation has been the most stressful aspect. Our joint account, which I've faithfully contributed to for 6 years, now receives only the minimum required for household bills. Everything else flows into my private account. I've cataloged everything we own, down to the barely used tennis rackets gathering dust in our garage. Those were an anniversary gift from Sarah 2 years ago, back when she apparently still wanted me breathing. Last week, I told Sarah I had to travel for work. 4 days in Denver for training. She seemed relieved, practically pushed me toward the door. I'm certain she and Christopher had our house to themselves within hours of my departure. But here's the thing, I never left town. Stayed at a budget motel just outside the city. Spent those 4 days meeting with the attorney, organizing finances, and preparing for what's coming next. When I returned from my trip, I installed cameras in our living room and kitchen. Nothing in the bedroom. I'm not trying to capture intimate footage, just conversations. Legal in our state since it's my property too. Already recorded Sarah on the phone with Christopher several times, planning their next moves. In one conversation, she mentioned they should wait until July to file for divorce. Apparently, that's when Christopher's bonus arrives. How thoughtful. The real turning point came 6 days ago. I decided it was time to confront Christopher directly. Not Sarah yet. Christopher. I discovered which coffee shop he visits every morning before work. One of those pretentious places with $8 lattes and baristas who treat coffee like fine art. I waited in my truck until I saw him park his ridiculous German sedan, then followed him inside. He didn't recognize me initially. Why would he? I'm just the faceless husband in the background of Sarah's stories. I sat across from him while he waited for his order. The expression on his face when I introduced myself was priceless, like watching someone realize they'd left their front door wide open during a hurricane. I kept my voice conversational, casually mentioned knowing everything. Showed him a sample of the recovered texts. Suggested his wife might find them interesting. Christopher started sweating through his expensive shirt, kept glancing around like someone might rescue him. He asked what I wanted, as if this was some kind of negotiation. I smiled and explained I wanted nothing from him except distance from Sarah until my divorce was finalized. He promised to back off immediately, even offered me money, which I declined. Not because I'm noble, but because accepting his cash would complicate the legal process. I need him scared, not relieved. Since that meeting, Sarah's been acting increasingly strange, checking her phone constantly but receiving no responses. Calling numbers that go straight to voicemail. Christopher is ghosting her exactly as promised. The confusion on her face grows daily. Yesterday, she asked if everything was okay between us. Said I seemed distant lately. I nearly laughed directly in her face. Instead, I mentioned work stress. She suggested we take a weekend trip somewhere to reconnect. The audacity is almost impressive. Meanwhile, I've been laying groundwork with our social circle. Nothing obvious, no dramatic accusations or public scenes, just casual comments that plant seeds of doubt. Mentioning to friends how Sarah's been working late so frequently. Asking if anyone's seen her at the places she claims to be. People are starting to notice inconsistencies in her stories. Rebecca visited last Sunday, ostensibly to return some books, but really to check on my mental state. Sarah was noticeably uncomfortable around her. Rebecca has this way of studying people like she's scanning for deception. She asked Sarah about her work conference from last month, mentioning she'd seen someone who looked exactly like Sarah downtown that weekend, nowhere near where the training was supposed to occur. The stammering excuse Sarah provided was painfully unconvincing. The small satisfactions keep me motivated, like when Sarah's credit card was declined at the grocery store because I'd removed her as an authorized user on our joint account. Or when she couldn't access our shared streaming accounts because I'd changed all the passwords. Tiny inconveniences that slowly crack her sense of security. Living like this is exhausting, maintaining the performance, pretending I don't know the person across the breakfast table fantasized about my death. There are moments I almost break, almost scream the truth just to see her reaction. But the long-term strategy is worth it. The complete systematic destruction of her comfortable existence is worth it. Last night almost pushed me over the edge. Sarah received a call during dinner. From her expression, I knew it concerned Christopher. She excused herself to take it in the bedroom. When she returned, her eyes were red from crying. Part of me felt twisted satisfaction. Another part remembered the woman I'd fallen in love with years ago and felt something like sadness. Not quite grief, not quite regret. Just acknowledgement that something once meaningful was now dead. I asked if everything was okay. She nodded and mumbled something about a stressful project. The lie hung between us like smoke in a closed room. For a brief moment, I considered ending the charade, laying everything out. But the moment passed. The plan is working too effectively to abandon now. This morning brought an unexpected development. Christopher's wife called me. Apparently, he'd confessed to some version of the affair to her as a preemptive measure. She'd found my number in their phone records and wanted details. We're meeting for coffee tomorrow. I have copies of everything ready. Christopher's house of cards is about to collapse spectacularly. As for Sarah, the pressure is clearly intensifying. She tried calling Christopher 19 times yesterday according to our phone records. 19 desperate attempts to reach someone who's completely cut her off. She's starting to panic, searching for a lifeline that doesn't exist. I've scheduled a meeting with HR at her workplace next week. Not to create drama, just to quietly inform them of an inappropriate relationship between employees that might affect company culture. The policy handbook I found online has clear sections about disclosure of romantic relationships, especially between different levels of management. Funny how neither Sarah nor Christopher bothered with that formality. James thinks I should accelerate the timeline, just serve her the papers and finish this. But there's method to my approach. I want Sarah to experience the same slow-building dread I felt standing in that kitchen reading those texts. The same gradual realization that everything she thought was solid is actually quicksand. The same helpless panic as every support structure collapses. Is it petty? Absolutely. Justified? I believe so. When someone wishes you dead while you're breaking your back clearing snow at 4:30 in the morning, they forfeit the right to a clean, simple divorce. The next phase begins tomorrow. I've transferred the last of my personal belongings to storage, changed my direct deposit, secured all crucial documents. The attorney has divorce papers ready to file. Sarah's about to discover that the husband she wanted dead has been 12 steps ahead of her all along. Final update coming soon. Thanks again for all the support. Dark times, but reading your comments helps. Knowing I'm not alone in this nightmare makes each day slightly more bearable. Final update. Thanks for the awards and messages. Honestly didn't expect this trilogy to connect with so many people. For those asking about my mental health, I'm managing. Some days better than others. It's been 41 days since I discovered those texts. 41 days of playing chess while Sarah thought we were playing checkers. 41 days of watching her world crumble piece by piece like a controlled demolition. And now it's finished. The dust is settling. Quick recap for newcomers. Found my wife texting her lover about hoping I'd die of a heart attack while clearing snow. Discovered their months-long affair. Instead of confronting her immediately, I methodically prepared for divorce while psychologically dismantling her security. Previous posts contain the details. Where did we leave off? Right, I was meeting Christopher's wife for coffee. That meeting changed everything. Amanda, Christopher's wife, was nothing like I'd expected. I'd pictured some naive, clueless woman, but she arrived in athletic wear and sneakers with the energy of someone who could probably outrun me if necessary. Turns out she's a former college basketball player who now runs a successful fitness blog. Christopher had confessed to a brief inappropriate relationship with a coworker, minimizing everything as usual. When I slid the evidence binder across the table, Amanda didn't cry or panic. She put on reading glasses and reviewed it page by page, occasionally sipping her iced coffee like she was examining quarterly reports. After 20 minutes of silence, most awkward coffee meeting ever, she closed the binder, removed her glasses, and simply said, "Well, shit." Then she asked if I had copies she could keep. We spent the next hour comparing notes, filling timeline gaps. Apparently, Christopher had been acting suspicious since autumn, always on his phone, working late, the classic signs we'd both missed. What happened next wasn't part of my plan, but it accelerated everything beautifully. Amanda, who has about 38,000 followers on her fitness blog, didn't post anything directly about the affair. But that night, she did share a story about spring cleaning and removing toxic elements with some heavy rock music playing while she packed Christopher's designer clothes into garbage bags. Internet detectives being what they are, her followers immediately started speculating. By morning, Christopher's social media was flooded with questions. The next day, everything converged perfectly. I'd taken time off work, knowing Sarah would be home late. Set up the living room like a corporate presentation. Evidence binder on the coffee table. Divorce papers neatly stacked. Screenshots printed and arranged chronologically. Even had a PowerPoint ready on my laptop with a timeline of their relationship, complete with hotel receipts and phone records. Excessive maybe, but there's something satisfying about good visual aids when someone's world is imploding. When Sarah finally came home around 7:30, she looked stressed. Checked her phone immediately, still hoping for messages from Christopher. She didn't notice the setup initially, just dropped her bag and mentioned grabbing takeout since she was too exhausted to cook. Then she saw the binder, saw me sitting calmly in the armchair, saw the papers. The room temperature seemed to drop 15 degrees instantly. What followed was like watching someone cycle through grief stages on fast forward. First confusion, asking what all this was, laughing nervously like it might be an elaborate joke. Then denial, claiming I was misinterpreting, that the texts weren't what they seemed. Then anger, how dare I invade her privacy, talk to Christopher's wife. I stayed silent through most of it, just clicking through PowerPoint slides as she ranted. The timeline, the evidence, the text where she hoped for my death. That one I let linger on screen longer. When she finally ran out of steam, I handed her the divorce papers. Told her I'd already moved most of my belongings out, that I'd be staying with James until she found somewhere else to live. Since the house was in my name, another detail she'd conveniently forgotten. The shift from anger to panic was almost cinematic. Suddenly, she was crying, claiming she'd made a mistake, that Christopher meant nothing, that the texts were just dark humor she never really meant, that she'd never actually wanted me dead. I asked if she'd checked her work email today. She looked confused, then grabbed her phone. Her face went pale reading the message from HR requesting a meeting tomorrow morning. Turns out her workplace has zero tolerance for undisclosed relationships between management levels. Christopher had already been called in earlier that day. The crying intensified. Sarah kept saying this would ruin her career, her reputation. I reminded her that just last month, she was hoping I'd die of a heart attack in our driveway so she wouldn't have to deal with divorce proceedings. Funny how consequences suddenly seemed excessive when they were happening to her. She tried a new approach, claiming Christopher had manipulated her, that he was the mastermind, that she'd been vulnerable after her mother's health issues last year. I pulled up the texts where she'd initiated most of their meetings, suggested the hotels, complained about me, and fantasized about our future without me in it. By midnight, Sarah had moved from denial to bargaining, offered couples therapy, promised to quit her job, swore she'd make everything up to me, even tried initiating physical intimacy, which was so transparently desperate I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I slept in the guest room that night, door locked. Could hear her crying through the wall. The sound used to devastate me. Now it was just background noise, like our broken bathroom fan that never got fixed. The following week was a blur of logistics. Sarah was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Christopher, with his senior position and connections, somehow kept his job but was transferred to another office across the country. Amanda filed for divorce the same day I did, and from what I hear through mutual connections, she's taking him for everything he's worth. Sarah couldn't afford the mortgage alone, especially with her job situation uncertain. She moved in with her sister temporarily, taking only clothes and personal items. Watching her pack was surreal. This woman I'd shared 6 years with, reduced to suitcases and boxes, sorting through artifacts of our failed marriage like an archaeologist at a dig site. The social fallout was swift. Most friends took my side after learning the basics. A few stayed neutral, not wanting to choose sides. Only one of Sarah's college friends defended her, claiming I must have driven her to it somehow. That friendship imploded spectacularly during a group dinner when James, 3 beers in, asked her if wishing your spouse dead was a reasonable response to marital problems. Sarah's family was mixed. Her parents were mortified. Her father couldn't even look me in the eye when they came to help her move. Her sister pulled me aside and apologized, said she'd suspected something was wrong for months but didn't want to interfere. admitted Sarah had always been the family princess who never faced consequences for anything. Throughout all this, Sarah's attempts at reconciliation grew increasingly desperate. Daily texts, tearful voicemails, flowers delivered to my workplace, a 114-page letter detailing every good moment of our marriage, as if cataloging the past could somehow erase her betrayal. She even showed up at James' place one night, drunk and crying, until his girlfriend threatened to call the police. The divorce proceedings moved forward despite her delaying tactics. My attorney was ruthlessly efficient, having handled similar cases countless times. Sarah finally got representation of her own, some budget option her sister found, who seemed overwhelmed by the mountain of evidence against her client. 2 months in, Sarah lost her job. The internal investigation concluded she'd violated multiple policies. Christopher predictably threw her under the bus completely, claiming she'd pursued him aggressively and that he'd tried ending things several times. Classic Christopher. With no income and diminishing prospects, Sarah's desperation peaked. She started posting vague, self-pitying quotes on social media, reached out to mutual friends with revised versions of what happened, even contacted Rebecca to try getting her to intervene on her behalf, a spectacular miscalculation that resulted in my sister blocking her on every platform. The divorce was finalized last week, faster than average, the lawyer said, due to overwhelming evidence and Sarah's eventual decision to stop fighting the inevitable. No children to complicate things, thankfully. No shared business. Just the division of assets, which heavily favored me given the circumstances. Yesterday was the first time I'd seen Sarah in person since she moved out. We met at a notary's office to sign final paperwork. She looked different, thinner, darker circles under her eyes, hair pulled back hastily instead of her usual careful styling. For a brief moment, I felt that twinge again. Not love or forgiveness, just recognition of someone who once meant everything and now feels like a stranger. As we walked to our cars afterward, she tried one last time. Said she'd been in therapy, learning about her self-destructive patterns. Said she still loved me, still believed we could rebuild, that losing me had made her realize what really mattered. I looked at her, really looked, and felt nothing but exhaustion. Told her that wishing someone dead isn't something you recover from. That trust, once shattered that completely, doesn't get repaired. That I genuinely hoped she'd find whatever she was searching for, but it wouldn't be with me. She started crying again, right there in the parking lot between a delivery truck and someone's rusting sedan. Said I was being cruel, that everyone deserves second chances, that the new Sarah would never hurt me again. I just got in my truck and drove away. Some conversations have no good endings. It's been 7 months since that morning in the kitchen when I saw those texts. 7 months of anger, grief, planning, and finally release. I'm back in my house now, repainted the walls, rearranged furniture, trying to erase the memory and prints of her in every room. James and I still meet for beers on Thursdays. He's been solid through all this, the kind of friend who helps you move metaphorical bodies. Rebecca checks in almost daily, worried about how I'm really doing beneath the stoic exterior. My answer varies depending on the day. Dating is a distant concept, like planning a trip to another planet. Possible someday, but not a priority now. Trust doesn't come easily anymore, and I find myself analyzing casual interactions with women, looking for hidden meanings, secret communications. My therapist says that's normal, that it'll fade with time. Sarah still tries contacting me occasionally. Birthday texts, holiday cards, random, just checking in messages that I mostly ignore. From social media, which I rarely check anymore, I can see she's moved to another city, started a new job, posted something recently about rebuilding from rock bottom, with some inspirational quote overlaid on a sunset. Good for her, I guess. As for Christopher, karma's a patient collector. His transfer wasn't the promotion he expected. According to Amanda, who I still meet for coffee occasionally, trauma bonding is real. He's living in a studio apartment while their divorce finalizes, struggling to maintain his previous lifestyle on a single income with alimony payments looming. His oldest daughter won't speak to him. His country club membership lapsed. Small satisfactions. The house feels empty sometimes, not in a sad way, just in a space to fill way. Thinking about getting a dog. Always wanted one, but Sarah was allergic. Or so she claimed. Now I wonder if that was just another small lie in a marriage built on them. It's snowing again today. Not a blizzard like before, just light flakes drifting down. I still get up early to clear the driveway, old habits and all. But now, when I come inside to warm up, the only messages on my phone are from people who actually care whether I live or die. And that is worth all the cold mornings in the world.